Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss another example of how Boris Johnson is abusing his emergency COVID powers to fleece the country by funneling off a £110 million contract to a company that doesn't even exist in any serious way. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, a few days ago, we had another government minister explaining why we can't afford to furlough workers on 80% of their wages as we had been doing, and that was why their U-turn on extending the scheme was only going to pay 2/3. Yet what nobody seems to be asking, or at least asking these ministers directly, is why it is that the government can afford to throw billions into offshore bank accounts of Tory donors. And no, I don't just mean contracts for goods or services being awarded to Tory donors. That would be bad enough. That is your standard Tory corruption. It wouldn't necessarily represent the best value or the best quality for the money being spent. But what is happening is way worse, because billions of the money is simply not being spent on goods or services at all, as far as we can tell. It's just a massive kickback. You know, it's as corrupt as you can get. Some donate a few tens of thousands to the Conservatives, or individual ministers sometimes, and they get a contract worth millions, tens of millions in this case. And when the government award a contract, they are required to publish details of the contract within 30 days. But Boris Johnson's government have been failing to do so on most of these COVID contracts for some time. And those contracts add up to billions of pounds of public expenditure that we apparently can't afford to spend on British workers who actually need it. The latest award is a £110 million contract for PPE. Now, huge PPE contracts to companies that either don't exist or have nothing to do with healthcare are not new. One of the more eye-opening examples was PestFix, which, as the name suggests, is a small pest control firm that employs not much more than a dozen people, and they were given 11 different contracts worth about £100 million for PPE. But 10 of those contracts, worth tens of millions of pounds worth of public money, are still a mystery. What are they for? PPE apparently, but what exactly? What PPE? How much? Have we got it yet? Is it good value for money? No idea, because the details of those contracts are still to be published. You know, put it this way, let us imagine just for a moment that the government is just shoveling that money into the hands of the heads of companies, and that those executives are just pocketing it all for themselves. Let's just imagine that that is what is happening. Can we prove that's not happening? No, because we have absolutely no way of knowing what's happening to the money, because none of the details have been made public. So for all we know, that is what's happening. So back to the latest blatant example of Tory corruption here, under cover of COVID. This is £110 million worth of PPE, apparently, given out to a company called PPE MedPro. That's a lot better than PestFix, you might think. That actually sounds like a medical company. And a medical company that deals in PPE, no doubt. You know, so far so good, no problem. But hang on a minute. As some eagle-eyed observer noted, this company, PPE MedPro, was only brought into existence this May, with a share capital of £100. So how could a company that has only just formed, with a value of only £100, possibly manage £110 million worth of government contracts? I mean, even assuming that they do genuinely deal in PPE, which itself would be an improvement, you know, I mean, I'm sure there are lots of PPE companies formed in May, small cottage industries supplying trendy face masks, for example. They've been all the rage. Yeah, absolutely. But what I doubt is that any of these, and you can imagine these would have a small value, the business would have a small value because it's just churning stuff out and selling them. Could it handle a £110 million contract? I don't think they could. Or if they could, I shudder to think what they're charging for a single flower patterned face mask to make it up to that value. And, you know, and what gets me thinking is this keeps happening. Shouldn't people be outraged? Is it because Brexit has divided us so much so that it's like American partisan politics now, where people identified with being on a particular side or in a particular party, and they will make up any excuse to back up any wrongdoing if someone on their side behaves poorly? You know, the situation where if someone on your side does a thing, you will back them to the hilt. If someone on the other side does exactly the same thing under exactly the same circumstances, you will want them hung, drawn and quartered. Are we there? Is that what's causing it? Because that's all I can think of. I mean, yeah, it doesn't help that a lot of the media, with the largest circulation, are not really reporting on it and not reporting it in those terms. Or they're not sticking to it when they do. Sometimes they do a little thing on it and then leave it. But it is being talked about. And there just doesn't seem to be the outrage that there should be. You know, is it because the sums of money being bandied about by the government are so huge that it just doesn't seem like a big deal? I mean, we're borrowing an extra £300 billion this year at least, taking our national debt over the 2 trillion mark for the first time. A mere billions, just completely unaccounted for money. Is that just not a big deal by comparison? But remember, this is even worse than simple corruption, because, as I said, if it were the case that the contract was being awarded and it was being awarded to the company that donated the most money to the Conservatives, that'd be bad enough. That's corruption, plain and simple, and still represents a theft of the nation's assets. But we aren't even getting what we ordered. It's not that we're paying a huge markup, you know, extra borrowing to get what we need. We're not getting what we need. You know, we aren't getting the goods or services that the public money is being used to pay for. We don't have enough PPE. We don't have enough tests. Our tracing system is a joke. None of it is working. We're not getting what we're paying for. And never mind whether it's good value for what we're paying for it. If the government were awarding these contracts following all the rules, for most of them, there should really be scrutiny of the different bids. These contracts are being awarded without any bidding process. They're just being given to people. Just, here you go. Here's a £100 million contract for you. Now, when it was first happening, it was shocking. It was actually shocking. Now it's just the latest in a campaign to steal money from the public purse. Worse than that, actually, it's worse than that. Because there isn't enough in the public purse to pay for all this. We're not just stealing at the moment. You know, we're borrowing money. The country is borrowing money to pay for all this. And it's all been piled onto the national debt to pay for these bandits. The debt has to be serviced. So we're not just paying while this emergency is in place. We're going to be paying this for a long time to come. You know, as long as Johnson and his crooks are in power, they're going to keep doing this. They're going to keep piling on the national debt. And that's going to be something we're going to be paying for decades. But also, even if they get rid of him, because Conservatives in general do not pay our debts, you know, when they have good times, which occasionally happens despite their crass handling of the economy, when we do have good times, they still don't pay it off. At no point during their 10 years in power so far have they paid anything off. You know, they've been in power for over 10 years and they always spend more than they take in. You know, so if the tax revenues ever did go up unexpectedly, they wouldn't go, oh, we've got some surplus here, we'll pay off the national debt. No, they'll just find another way to pay off Tory donors. Because donations are the only debt that they actually recognise. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.